Good evening, everyone, and welcome to an Cyclone Chasers update. Tonight, the 5th of January 2013, and I'd like to firstly say thank you to everyone for our Facebook following there. We've just hit 12,000 likes tonight. That's a massive achievement for a site that started with less than 100, obviously, when it started in late November, early December last year. So just over a year, and we've got 12,000 people following us. And for those of you, we know that there's a number of you out there that aren't on Facebook that do follow us, and we'd also like to say thank you for your continued support. Alright everyone, this update's going to be reasonably brief, but we'll talk about the models in a little bit more detail. This is the tropical low region, or region of development of this tropical low, right there where my cursor is. This imagery is courtesy of WeatherZone, weatherzone.com.au. They have some excellent weather graphics, free to join up and get access to a lot of these weather graphics. But very, very nice convection developing tonight between, or very close to the East Timor region in the Timor Sea. So that will be the area that we need to watch now over the next 2 to 3 days as that drifts towards the west-southwest or southwest, and then models diverge big time as to what they do with it. The other area we're going to talk about tonight is the far northern Coral Sea. Around about early to mid next week, we're expecting a very weak circulation up here to form, probably about a 50% probability, maybe slightly more, maybe closer to 60% probability according to the great ensemble today, where we look at 100 different models. About 60 of them had a weak circulation here, about 100 of them had this low forming, and about 60 of them had that low developing into a tropical cyclone. So we'll be talking a lot more about this one, and we'll also be covering this one towards the end. The other thing tonight is we're going to be looking at the winner of our Tropical Cyclone Frida online poll, and we'll be discussing or finding that winner, and you'll get a mini weather station. Okay, so the Bureau, what they're saying about this tropical low in Western Australia is that on Tuesday they do expect it to form into a tropical cyclone. It's expected to move in a west-southwest direction into the western region over the coming days. This system may develop into a tropical cyclone on Monday even, some of the modelling suggesting earlier than the Tuesday. There's also another very weak circulation a little bit to the west of all that, or a fair way to the west of all that, but we really don't expect this one to form, and in fact this secondary circulation will probably take a lot of the limelight off this one here. But look, there is a circulation there, it's not doing anything, it's possibly moving slowly southeastwards, but it's not something we're going to waste any more time on, but something to note. Alright folks, so we're going to jump straight into this and go straight to the models. We're not going to talk too much about current conditions. As I say, this was meant to be a brief update tonight. Our proper update, once again, tomorrow night, where we'll go through in-depth modelling. This is the No Gaps model. The No Gaps operational run has this particular tropical low developing where it is right now, and from there pushing directly south-southwest and crossing the North Kimberley coast as a Category 1 tropical cyclone. A little bit of wind shear is going to hold it back, and there's a very interesting byplay happening between some northerly winds that'll try and push this thing to the south, and then some easterly winds that'll try to push this thing to the west. We'll talk a bit more about that once we go through all the models. But this is No Gaps, and it's saying Category 1 North Kimberley, and it's saying around about the 10th or 11th of January. Much more accurate, the UK Met model. The UK Met model has this system forming in around about 36 hours' time as a tropical low, and then pushing it to the west under influence of ridging before pushing it to the southwest, and then if the UK ensemble decides to either push it directly west from there or directly south, southwest or south from there. So a lot of model disagreement there, but suffice to say by the 11th of January we have at least a Category 2 system on our hands according to the UK Met, and it's directly north of the Pilbara coastline. The GFS model has already formed this low, so it's already saying that it's there, and from there it's going to push to the south and then to the west, and then directly south, cross the coast as a Category 1 or 2 tropical cyclone on the North Kimberley coast, then continue to maintain structure as it pushes just inland of the coast, and by the end of the forecast for the GFS operational has it just inland of the Pilbara. Now that's a huge difference from what we've seen. It follows pretty close to the no-gaps model. The GFS can be a little slightly over-ambitious in forming a tropical cyclone. Once a tropical cyclone's formed, the GFS tends to go all right at directional movement, but the actual ability of the GFS to forecast tropical cyclone development is slightly off. It tries to aggressively develop them as opposed to what normally would happen. So we do need to be cautious with that track, particularly what it's going to do over the next 24-48 hours in its push to the south. Sorry, 48 to 72 hours in its push to the south. The Canadian CMC model has got this thing forming in a few hours' time, pushing it to the southwest, and then to the west, and then to the south, and then to the west, and then back to towards the south-southwest. Basically, very close to the Pilbara coast. So the CMC model has it as a Category 2, high-end Category 2 system on the 11th of January, just off the Pilbara coastline, or possibly even the southern Kimberley coastline. So, what's our go-to model, the Europeans saying about it? Well, we can see that it's pushing a bit of a monsoonal surge into the tropical low in 48 hours' time. This is on Monday morning. It has the low just clearing the Timor coastline and starting to get back into open waters. So, from where it starts here, it's got a pushing to the west-southwest. We continue to see a very slow drift to the west-southwest on the Wednesday, but we see this monsoon surge coming in, actually strengthening, and we start to see some stronger winds to its south. So possibly by Tuesday morning, this thing could be a tropical cyclone. But as I say, more than likely Tuesday sometime in the day it should form, but there is still that chance of a Monday formation. By Wednesday morning, we pretty surely have a tropical cyclone there. You can see here on its south side, it's starting to pack some fairly strong winds. It's still got a nice flow in from the monsoon coming into its north, so this is in a nice spot there for further development. But it is being tempered somewhat at that stage between the 72-96 hour mark by a little bit of wind. As we start to get into the extended range, we start to see a drift to the south. Now, I'm just going to go through why that could be happening, but we see a definite drift to the south of the system, and we see it intensify in the 96 to 120 hour period. We continue to see that drift to the south in the 120 to 144 hour period, and we see the system really tightening and really strengthening at that point in time as it's aided by an outflow channel, lower wind shear, and nice, warm, very warm sea surface temperatures. Now, on the 12th of January, rather than continuing to move south and nailing the Pilbara coastline, the European model has a new high building in underneath it and a new ridging, strengthening ridging developing from the southwest, and that ridging will start to push the system out to the west, and it starts to gets it to about here and then drifts it, or not really drifts it, but really gives it a shove to the west. And you can see here the wind field, particularly to its south, very, very intense by Saturday. So what's holding this tropical low back over the next 2 to 3 days? Well, if we track it from tomorrow, we see that from tomorrow morning, we see the tropical low just in there near the Timor coastline, and we see the system gradually strengthen and gradually develop, and in 2 days' time, by Monday morning, we still see it in the vicinity of East Timor. So it's still being hampered by coastline and rugged terrain, and so that's a key factor in its next 2 days. If it can get itself over some warm water, it may develop a little bit quicker than this, but we can see that the Euro's not real keen on this, and by day 3, it finally has it developing into a decent system once it gets over some open water, and it starts to develop it into a really good tropical low by Monday night. And so by Tuesday morning, we see the system getting reasonably close to being named a TC. Now let's compare that scenario to this more crazy or aggressive scenario from the GFS model. And the GFS model has the system here, right where the EC model had it in 24 hours time. And if we look at what it does to it in the next 24 hours, it really forms it quickly into a strong tropical low while it's still over land, or very close to being over land. Now that seems a little far-fetched. If we then track it for 3 days, we see an intense-looking tropical cyclone developing here, possibly Category 1, Category 2, by Tuesday morning and pushing directly south. And in fact, the GFS model that's just come out as I'm doing this video is showing that even slightly more intense system and slightly further to the east as it tracks towards the south. Now, this seems a very aggressive solution and ends up hitting the North Kimberley coastline. It seems like a very aggressive solution from the GFS, but we do have to pay attention to it. It is in the short term. And if it decides to adopt this track, then there's not going to be that much time between when it forms and when it hits the coast. But look, we don't expect this track to actually happen. We do expect more of that west-southwest drift before an eventual turn to the south. And then in the long term, we expect it to head towards the west. The issue becomes, how close to the coast is it when it eventually finishes its southward turn? Okay, now if we look at shear forecasts, now if we have a look at the Euro in a couple of days, in 3 days' time, it starts to form the tropical cyclone out here near East Timor. But if we look at the wind shear that the cyclone's encountering, we've got moderate wind shear values here in a very tight region. Now that's holding the cyclone back from deepening quickly in that short to medium term. Now, if you compare that with where the GFS model forms the system, which is closer to East Timor, or closer to the east of it, we see the model develops this tropical cyclone very rapidly, and it develops it under moderate wind shear to even strong wind shear conditions. So this is one of the major limitations with GFS, is it underestimates wind shear on a tropical cyclone's development or formation, and I think it's doing that with this particular scenario. So it has this system developing, deepening fast, and hitting North Kimberley, when in fact it's probably more likely to do the European type thing, where it sort of meanders to the west-southwest or southwest and forms here to the west of East Timor or to the southwest of East Timor. That seems to be a more likely scenario than this very aggressive modeling from the GFS. Now heading over to Coral Sea for a brief look at the tropical low that we're expecting to form there. A weak low may form on the monsoon trough on Tuesday next week, but this is not expected to intensify during the outlook period. In fact, all the modelling is suggesting it's not going to intensify at all. There was a thought there from the GFS model that this will form into a tropical cyclone earlier in the day, but that has since been dropped, and we are looking at the potential for a new tropical low either in the Gulf or in the Coral Sea in the long term, and that one will show some potential of formation, but it's far too early at the moment to speculate exactly where that is or where that's going to form. But for this one here, the conditions don't look like they're going to be there for it to form into a tropical cyclone, at least in the short to medium, at least sort of early to mid to even getting into late next week. So here's what the modelling's doing with it. CMC forms it just off the coast of PNG, or just off the southeast tip of PNG, pushes it to the southeast. It develops it on the Tuesday, pushes it to the southeast and deepens it a little bit to about 1,000 to 1,010 hectopascals, somewhere in there, and then eventually weakens it out on the 11th back to a non-feature. The UK Met model is also throwing a whole bunch of different cyclogenesis potential points around, but basically somewhere between PNG Solomons, pushes it to the south, and then starts to drift it back towards the west, towards the coast, on the 11th. But once again, the UK Met is suggesting that this will start happening on Sunday, so we might start to see it as a bit of a feature there Sunday. That looks to be quite early. We don't expect it to form that early, but interestingly, it does have it starting to push towards the west. The upper level winds in the Coral Sea, maybe not early to mid next week, but late next week, do start to suggest, and then after that, do start to look at a possible more westerly movement of anything tropical in that week. But not next week, but the week after we're talking about there. The GFS model, same deal. Tuesday starts up here a little bit further south than the other models, pushes it to the south and then pushes it to the northeast. Because it's really weak, you know, it will drift around depending on whatever influences it and steers it at the time in the lower levels. And the steering influence when it's that weak can be very fickle, and we don't get a real good idea. We saw that with Tropical Cyclone Frida. We saw her try to move, and we had models deciding that it was going to move with the upper level winds. We had models deciding it was going to move with the lower level winds, and so its movement was jumbled all over the place. This one looks like it's going to be a fairly weak and shallow system, so it's probably going to be guided by whatever happens near the surface. The GFS suggests that the surface will push it to the northeast before eventually starting to drift it back towards the west. But once again, no significant formation or development potential. And the good old no-gaps model, it forms it on Monday and drifts it around to the east, then back to the southwest, then down to the south, and then eventually kills it by around about Thursday. So once again, not developing into much of a feature. It is a tropical low, but that's it. Very weak one at that. As I say, the long-term projections suggest that there could be another one out there that will have a little bit more potential, or one in the Gulf that might have a little bit more potential as we head towards the latter part of January, or middle to latter part of January. The other thing that we're starting to see models suggesting is a new tropical low off the coast of Darwin, and possibly becoming another tropical cyclone for the western region in the long term. So we're talking not next week, more likely the week after. So it could be a very active January and early February for the northwest region. Could be a fairly active late January, early February period for the Coral Sea as well. So there's something to keep an eye on as we head through January. All right, folks, thanks very much for watching tonight. Now, before we do go, let's do our prize draw. So our prize has been donated by Chris, by my business, actually, by my business, Satellite Sports and Supplements. And so the prize donation will be a wireless weather station that you can just stick on your desktop, and you can put your little humidity temperature sensor outside as well. It measures temperature, humidity, time, dates, tides, sunrise, sunset times, those sort of things. So once you program that in, it's pretty easy to use. And as I say, just a nice little tidbit from my business to say thank you for those of you that participate in our online quizzes and stuff. Okay, folks, the way it works, we use a random number generator. There were 191 contestants that entered that answered correctly that Tropical Cyclone Frida would not cross the coast in any way as any type of circulation. And there were 191 correct answers for that out of about 600 people. So out of those 191, they each get three potential chances. So we use a random number generator, and the random number there is, the maximum there is 573. So we type that into the random number generator, we hit generate, and then we match it up to our Excel database, and voila, we have a winner. Let's have a look. 3, 2, 1. All right, our result is 45. Let's see who that is. And number 45 is Tony Leadham from Darwin, Northern Territory. So if you know Tony, or Tony, if you're watching this tonight, please give us a call, contact us via PM or via some type of messaging or SMS, and we'll just need your address, and we can send you out a wireless mini weather station. All right, thanks for playing, everyone, and good luck next time. Thanks for watching tonight. We'll have another update tomorrow night. Good night.